Those of us on the right who, after terrorist attacks, tell people that it's important to talk about the threat that terrorism poses to the Western world are often accused by the left of politicizing tragedy. But it seems as though that's precisely what Muslim groups are now doing in Canada in the wake of the tragic Quebec City mosque shooting that left 6 Muslims dead who were at prayers. Now, this happened. It was a tragic event. Obviously, we're still looking for the facts of what's going on there, what the motivations were of the shooter. But one fact remains from this is that it was a horrible attack that most of us, all of us, I hope, wish never happened. But that hasn't stopped a couple of Muslim groups from getting up and making this evidence of political gains that they want to make. 2 groups, one based in Quebec and one national group, the National Council of Canadian Muslims, formerly CARE Canada, have sent a letter to Canada's parliamentarians adopting essentially this mentality that the government has to combat Islamophobia. Now, this is in addition to motion M103, the anti-Islamophobia motion that critics, myself included, fear may result in censorship of speech deemed to be anti-Islamic. Adoption of M103 was one of the recommendations in the letter, but there was another one that was far more concerning. Mandatory education to high school students across the country of systemic violence and how government is systemically racist, systemically discriminatory, etc. In the letter, it asked for the following: this course to give our youth methods of uniting Canada. Now, that was from a PhD student at Université Laval. The communications director for the National Council of Canadian Muslims said the attack was a wake-up call that hate can kill. That's why it's important to take action now. And then we had from Amal Quebec, the spokesperson for that organization, Haroun Bouazi, saying this is not about Canadians being racist. No, just the whole government. He said Canadians are not racist, our systems are. That's why we need to evaluate the systems we have in place. Now, they're looking for, of course, the anti-Islamophobia motion. They're looking for police training on hate crimes. But this mandatory course, this program for high school students to tell them how, apparently racist the government is, how racist every system of government is. If they want to foster good relationships with police and other institutions, how is a high school program that's going to generate distrust, creating an us versus them, going to be beneficial? Now, we don't yet know what curriculum this would take. We don't yet know what the actual criteria would be. And they haven't talked about Islamophobia specifically in this context. They say all racism. But that's also the rhetoric that's used in M103. It only mentions Islamophobia once, but says, no, this is about all forms of systemic discrimination. And I don't exactly know what it's going to look like, but the image comes to mind of that scene in Clockwork Orange, forcing someone to watch a film with their eyes open. You're going to watch it, you're going to darn well like it, regardless of whether it makes any sense. But this is one further effort by a lot of groups which obviously have a vested interest in changing the way their community is viewed, attempting to do it through coercive means. We're not going to just educate people one-on-one. We're not going to have conversations in coffee shops. We're going to force the education system to tell every youth coming up through that system that it is improper to criticize a religious group, that it's improper to criticize a racial group, that it's improper to apparently have trust that government is doing its job when it comes to tackling any of these issues. This is something that has a huge threat to attack freedom of speech. It has a huge threat to attack that. I know that because we've seen these types of motion in action before in Canada, across the country, in provincial human rights commissions, in the federal human rights commission. Whenever anyone talks about wanting to break down these barriers, oftentimes what they're breaking down is fundamental freedoms. And that's why we've taken a stand. We have in Canada a freedom to offend. That doesn't mean it's always nice, but we have that freedom to do it. If you want to protect that, go to freedomtooffend.com, www.freedomtooffend.com. For the Rebel.media, I'm Andrew Lawton. Hey, if you want to make sure to get more great content like this, check out the Rebel.media and also become a premium member. Not only do you maintain your freedom to offend, but you also get access to content you won't see anywhere else in the country, only at the Rebel.media.